What a wonderful surprise to see you were invited here also. A capital place, isn't it? I was just admiring the library. Where on earth are my manners? My name, ladies and gentlemen, Raffles, but please be my guest. You may call me AJ. Well, do you know, frightfully glad when I received the invitation to dinner by the Hammond Smiles. Well, very festive of them, you understand. And besides, one meets such a different caliber of people here. Now, I freely confess I've never been to Cradley Heath before. I have to say it is far, far away from Bermondsey and the Albany Club, is it not? But no, I believe travel does broaden the mind. And at this time of year, surely one ought to be able to experience things anew at Christmas, more so than at any other time during the calendar. Wouldn't you agree? Now, I think we have just about enough time to explore this wonderful abode before we are called in for dinner. Now, I believe that you and I are going to get along famously, and so please, will you not be my guest? Shall we adjourn in the sitting room? I'm in rather a talkative frame of mind. I wonder, will you be so kind as to lend me your ears? Do you know, this place really is rather charming, isn't it? I don't know why, but I am rather reminded of that night when I first met a dear young Bunny. Bunny Manders, that is. Well, it must have been midnight. I was in my rooms at the Albany. We'd had rather an engaging evening playing baccarat. I'd managed to win a little more than I'd lost. And suddenly it was 12:30 when Bunny flung himself through the open door, began storming up and down my room in front of the fire, who had a face upon him like thunder. Well, I said to him, old boy, I certainly hope you're not here to reap your revenge. I'm afraid it will take more than myself in order to fulfill that. He turned himself away from me. What's this, young man? What you're saying when I know what you've done, I wouldn't wish to have anything to do with you. Oh, buck up, old sport. Yeah, have another whiskey. Well, Bunny refused. I asked him what on earth was wrong. Well, I'll explain to you as best I can, based upon what he said. Well, it is true earlier that evening we had all played several games of baccarat. Yes, I remember. And of course, Bunny had written any number of checks to myself and to the other good fellows. Yes. Well, already I'd begun to have a suspicion as to what the actual problem was. Well, Bunny turned to me, suddenly announced that those checks weren't even worth the paper they were written on. That every stick of furniture he had a bill of sale attached to it. What? How can that be, Bunny? Oh, your family is minted. I heard not so long ago you happened to come in for a... Oh, I see. All gone. Well, Bunny and I had used to go to the same school. I seem to remember he'd used to be a literary little cuss. Well, anyone these days can be a writer. Why, it's almost as straightforward, as simple as being an actor. Anyone could do it, Bunny. Why don't you write a few short stories? He looked upon me bitterly. Apparently not anyone could write off his debts. I see. And you mean no one else in the world can possibly help you? And then why have you come to me? Oh, my dear Bunny, merely because I've rooms at the Albany, because I play cricket every once in a while, or because I belong to this club, all that does not mean I have any money. Well, it was as important to me this night that I win at baccarat as to you. At that point, Bunny suddenly snatched up his hat, announced that, very well, he will take matters into his own hands. What do you mean, old boy? Well, suddenly he whipped out a revolver. Oh, so that's your game, is it? But I wonder, Bunny, do you have it in you? To end it all, I mean. Have you got the pluck? He raised the pistol to his head. It was only a matter of moments before I walked over and took the pistol from him. Now, let's have no more of this nonsense, old boy. Besides, I've only just had this place redecorated. Don't you know, blood's an awfully devil of a thing to rub out of one's carpet, to remove the stains from the wallpaper. Now, let's have no more nonsense talk of suicide, shall we? Good. Now, whiskey is the very last thing for you. May I suggest coffee? Over there. No, I'm quite all right. Well, of course, I promise I will not present the cheque tomorrow morning, but I can't speak for the other gentleman now, can I? Well, that means we have until now and 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. We must do everything within our power to prevent those cheques being drawn. Otherwise, old boy, it's absolute disgrace for you. Don't worry, just give me time to think. Half an hour or more will do. I paced up and down the carpet, ruminating a while as to what the best course of action may be. Very well. I turned to Bunny. As a matter of fact, old boy, I said to him, I happen to have a friend. Danby is his name. I rather think he'll be able to help us out. Oh, he has a place in Bond Street, a jeweler's shop. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I am allowed to have the run of the place, even have my own key. Yeah. Now, I remember, Bunny, you had used to do me a good favor every once in a while, back in our school days. I take it now you wouldn't turn a shade of pale, would you, if perhaps crime was mentioned? Oh, you'd do anything to help out a friend in need. Well, you are a fellow indeed, are you not? A moment ago suicide and now crime. Just as well you've come to me, old boy. An absolute modern paragon of the virtues. I remember the mental clock was chiming 1 even as Bunny and I left our rooms at the Albany. I hoped that there would still be some fire left in the grate. Already the night was promising to be rather a cold, if not an unexciting one. Now, outside in Piccadilly, there was a thick trench of fog, laying like snow upon the streets. On our way, we happened to encounter a policeman. The policeman smiled in a friendly fashion at me. I confess he gave rather a hard, uncompromising stare toward Bunny. My dear Bunny, you couldn't look more guilty if you tried. Oh, the poor beggars, these police. No, I don't envy them at all on a night like this. Well, you never know who you may encounter, do you? Well, just as well, a morally upright citizen like myself is abroad. And so we continued walking until we came to the corner of Bond Street. Now, over there, do you see? There is my friend Danby's establishment. However, more to the point, I was observing the dark spaces above. You see, it was to those that we were to repair immediately. I looked either way to ensure that the policeman was nowhere to be seen, and then I seized Bunny's arm and we stole across the street. I took the latchkey from my pocket, opened the door. We made our own ways in. Now, Bunny, I wonder, will you be so kind now as to remove your shoes, leave them here? Now, don't say a word. I wish to explore the lie of the land. Shh. Now, at our stockinged feet, we went up the first staircase, uncarpeted, of course. The smell of mold was rather thick in the air, the banisters quite dirty. We came to the first landing, and from thence to another, broader staircase. Well, this was more like it. Peeling wallpaper, more dusty banisters, the smell of damp in the air. Excellent. Capital indeed. Into one of the adjoining rooms I went, reappeared to Bunny's consternation, brandishing a dark lantern. I struck a match and lit the same. Yes, I'm aware, Bunny, this may be causing you any degree of confusion. I knew full well that this property was unlet. Now, as a matter of fact, I happened to view the same a month or so ago. I'm aware, Bunny, that this may be causing you a degree of bewilderment. A very strange practical joke to play upon one. Now, when I said that my friend Danby would be more than happy to lend us the money, I only meant in so many words. Well, I mean, he will understand fully after the event. But why compromise things? Why confuse matters? Explanations before the fact. There happens to be a jeweler's shop downstairs. Oh, the look upon poor Bunny's face. I don't understand, Raffles. A thief? You're a thief? Well, boy. Ladies and gentlemen, as I explained to Bunny, we can't all be fine, upstanding citizens now, can we? Well, besides, in my own view, wealth is very unevenly distributed. I merely do what lies within my own humble means to redistribute the wealth. Besides, bills do not settle themselves now, do they? Now, I told Bunny to follow me back down the stairwell. Down there, we would put our shoes back on. I'd already explored the jeweler's shop. I happened to have bought several things from there a month or so before. As I've already explained, I had had a view of the apartments upstairs. I'd even gone to the trouble indeed of having a key cut. However, the problem for me lay in connecting the two. Well, I mean to say, the jeweler's shop downstairs and the rooms to let above. Well, I rather fancied having a crack at the job myself, although it was certainly no work for one man alone. It was a two-man job. Well, that night at cards, I was all set for throwing it up as a bad lot. And then when friend Bunny happened to explain to me his minor pecuniary embarrassment, serendipity, I suppose you would call it. Now, taking another key, we went downstairs. As I said to Bunny, at least down here we will be safe. Well, the sound will be muffled, much further away from the prying eyes of policemen. Now, using our skeleton key downstairs, we found ourselves within a small area. There were 4 doors. 3 of these had been left ajar. I peered in. Well, nothing there but empty and abandoned cellars. We don't go into those now, do we, ladies and gentlemen? And that just left a 4th door. Oh, this was locked and bolted. A matter of a few moments. Bunny and I peered outside. Now, this led to a fog-filled area. Now, facing us directly, another door, identical to the one, the lock of which I just picked. Bunny this way. The fog snaked about our ankles. Well, down here it wouldn't matter if there was the occasional tinkling of broken glass. Not much of a chance of us being overheard now, was there? And so I was soon able to overcome the lock of this first door. Although, as I said to Bunny, I was almost certain there'd be further complications upstairs. And so there were, but more of those anon. Well, we climbed our way up the stairs. At the top of the staircase, we found rather a sturdy-looking door, a solid mahogany, I believed. Locked, of course. Now, whenever I'm at work, ladies and gentlemen, by which, of course, I mean this specific kind of work, I always ensure that I leave with a burglar's kit about my person. Oh, any number of bits, some rock oil. Well, it works wonderfully well, you understand, for easing the work of the drill bit. Oh, and also a brace. Now, I selected one of these bits, applied some of the rock oil to the brace, so the least amount of noise will be made. Good heavens, I seem to recall, ladies and gentlemen, 47 minutes it took me. And 32 separate borings around that central lock. Now, I thought it wouldn't be difficult, but nonetheless, this was slightly trickier than I'd expected. Imagine my pang of chagrin, however, ladies and gentlemen, when I pushed the door open ever so slightly, only to discover, would only move an inch or two. Oh, curses, there was another obstacle just the other side, a large gate. This would never do at all. Well, evidently I had no other option than to remove, as a body, this lock from the first door, and then to reach through the aperture created, and so to pick the lock of the iron gate behind. Well, the way I explain it to you now makes it sound more straightforward, I suppose. But then again, I have been doing this for more years than I care to mention. Well, good job Bunny was there at hand. I made use of him. He carried the lock once I'd removed it from the first door, and then all that was required was another one of my skeleton keys. I reached through the hole, inserted the key, turned, and that unmistakable click. Then I pushed slightly, and both door and gate swung onwards with ease. Now, I said to Bunny it was absolutely criminal the way he had not had to do a single thing that night. No, high time that he earned his share of the spoils. Now, we were indeed in the jeweler's shop now, but I saw before me an iron curtain. Oh, easy enough to break, but nonetheless, they do make a deuce of a row. Now, I sent Bunny to the room above the jeweler's shop. I'd already ascertained it was dark. I led him upstairs. There was a Venetian blind pulled down. He would act as my lookout for a watchman or a policeman. If he were to see either, then 2 sharp raps upon the floor would alert me of their presence. Yeah, pull your weight, old boy. There's a good sort. It was only a few moments later when I summoned her friend Bunny that all the hard work was done. In fact, I was so proud of my efforts that I asked Bunny to peer under the iron curtain himself. I really was rather proud of my work in spite of myself. No, I hadn't bothered to take anything from the safe. Oh, good heavens, no. Most of the silver I left, although my eye had been caught by rather a charming cigarette case. I liked the look of it, and besides, I thought Bunny needed cheering up, so I gave that to him as a gift. Now, I confined myself merely to what was in the shop window. These had been in 3 separate compartments. Naturally, I'd stuffed my pockets with everything I could find. Now, imagine my delight, ladies and gentlemen, and I suppose of Bunny's also, when I happened to see over there a box of cigars and a crate of rather wonderful porter. Well, I opened one of these bottles and toasted to one another's success. And then, a couple of cigars later, friend Bunny and I retraced our steps, leaving but few clues behind us as to our presence. Well, of course, a discarded bottle, 1 or 2 cigar stubs, and perhaps a few disturbances in the dust. And, of course, the absence of so many diamonds. Now, as we made our way back to the Albany, I explained to friend Bunny how the idea of staging this job in the first place occurred to me. Well, I'd always fancied it, of course, but it wasn't until Bunny's involvement was I made aware that it would be a practicable option to me. Now, as to when I'd first decided upon a life of crime, well, I was in a similar predicament to that of dear Bunny. I happened to be working in the colonies at the time, playing a spot of cricket. Well, I realized my debts wouldn't take care of themselves. I always have to say, ladies and gentlemen, why on earth should a man settle for a dull, mundane, routine desk job when there is almost limitless wealth to be had, a life of crime, excitement, so on and so forth? Besides, what is life unless there be an element of risk involved? One should always strive to reach a little beyond one's own ease. Otherwise, what the dickens has heaven been invented for? What? Now, once more safely ensconced in my rooms at the Albany, I was heartened to see that there was still a bit of a fire left. I say so, I was as cold as Keats's owl. And so I unburdened my pockets of all of their contents. Diamonds, carbuncles, rubies, sapphires, diamonds, 1 or 2 necklaces, more pearls. Oh, I wonder, did I mention there were diamonds? I could tell by the look upon Bunny's face already he was suffering from a troubled conscience. What do you say, old boy? I believe this evening has gone rather splendidly. Well, there are the spoils of victory. Rather appropriate, don't you find, of this day being March the 15th? Well, the 15th of March, the Ides of March indeed. I'm sure you'll remember that for any number of years to come, will you not, old boy? And then I realized perhaps I was asking rather a lot of him. I mean to say, to join me in a life of crime. No need to say a word, old boy. Now, you allow me to take care of this. You are at perfect liberty to walk away now. And merely return here to my rooms at midday tomorrow. You will have your share of money. I gave you my word. I would help you clear your debts. Bunny said nothing for a while. And then I remembered that ghastly pistol of his. Now, I strode up to him and confiscated it, emptied the cartridges. Now, do you know, ladies and gentlemen, I never have been able to see the fascination with guns. They're simply not playing the game, is it, I mean? Well, one may accidentally use the thing, and then where would one be? Oh, I suppose anyone who does use such a thing experiences a certain frisson, some emotion or what so, but it is a habit that I believe I would never choose to adopt. Let's have no talk of suicide, Bunny. But for all of that, what's it to be? Are you in or out? For a moment, perhaps two, he said nothing, and finally turning at the fireplace, through gritted teeth, he said, "Oh, Raffles, I'm in. Sorry, what was that, old boy? I'm sorry, I'm in. Capital, dear fellow. Oh, I mean to say, you already have embarked upon the rocky road to ruin, have you not? Besides, falling in with a gentleman like me, well, you've cast your lot in with the devil already. You might as well go the whole hog." And so it was, ladies and gentlemen, as young Bunny Manders first took tentative steps upon his felonious path to crime. And so it came to pass upon that momentous day, the Ides of March. Do you know, ladies and gentlemen, I really am rather awfully glad now that I accepted the kind invitation to dine here at the Haden Smythes. What a wonderfully winning repast they've laid on. Charming like bit of supper. One might almost say it was cracking. It does rather remind me of a dinner that I attended at the old Bohemian Club. I wouldn't have missed it for the world. You see, it was there where I made the acquaintance of that bully and braggart, Rosenthal. Well, you must have heard of him. No, he was the American who made his fortune in the diamond fields. Well, evidently, the old Bohemian Club must have fallen on evil times. Well, you have to understand. They were holding a dinner in honor of Rosenthal. I know, shocking. Well, Rosenthal had with him his hired bully, Purvis, the prize fighter. Well, naturally, you will know all about him, a gentleman whose reputation precedes him at every turn. Well, Rosenthal was in his cups, not quite drunk, but nonetheless drunk enough to flaunt his wealth. To be more specific, he had a couple of quite gorgeous diamonds. Both of them had a purplish tinge to them, which showed to me there was money involved. One of them he wore upon his little pinky, the other one in the center of his shirt front. You ought to have heard how he boasted, making his fortune there in diamonds. Australia, South Africa, and finally he had come here. Oh, he was boasting there wasn't one of our bloated princes to be had who would dare flaunt such wealth in public. Well, Rosenthal was absolutely convinced the diamonds were worth $25,000 apiece. Well, the man may have had a point. £50,000 worn upon such an ugly specimen. My word, he was ugly. Over 6 feet, barrel-chested, flaming red hair. You ought to have seen the nose he had about his face, like a vulture. Suddenly, Imagine my delight when, what should Rubinstein do but whip out a great revolver, begin to brandish it around his head. Well, the waiters, they all dashed for the door as one. The old gentleman sitting at my right, he flung himself under the table in horror of his life. Well, then it was that this bully, this braggart, Rosenthal, began boasting, saying that none of these princes of ours would dare flaunt their wealth in such a way. And then pointing at this revolver, it was all Purvis the prizefighter could do to prevent his master from writing his name in bullet pox upon the wall. Anyone would think he'd been reading one Sherlock Holmes story too many. And then it was, well, this bully pointed again to his firearm and said there was a very good reason why no one dare wear such wealth about their person. Well, evidently he was keen as knives to tell us, and I, ladies and gentlemen, was keen as knives for him to tell me. Well, you understand, already I'd absolutely set my heart upon having those diamonds for myself. Oh, they weren't practical at all. I doubted very much I'd be able to sell them on. But I mean to say, the gentleman who owned them, he was such a bully, such a violent braggart. He simply had to be taken down a peg or two. Well, I have to say, ladies and gentlemen, does an artist paint merely to keep the wolf from the door? Does an author write merely to pay the bills? No, what about art for art's own sake? Well, that has always been my creed. Now give me the opportunity to steal from St. Paul's Cathedral, I'm your man. Good heavens, I would no sooner steal from a till whilst the shopkeeper's back is turned than I would to take the apples from an old woman's basket. I never steal from those who would mourn the loss. I never take from those who would suffer. However, Rosenthal, I knew, could well afford to lose £50,000 worth every once in a while. Besides, ladies and gentlemen, and I've already said, what is the point of someone having had the rather good idea to invent heaven, if every once in a while a gentleman does not run the risk of death? Well, I mean to say, I knew how dangerous the boxer Purvis was. I saw how handy Rosenthal was with that gun of his. Well, naturally, I might be shot down for my pains. But doesn't that make one appreciate life a little bit more? I had to have those stones, one way or the other. Now, I explained all of this to friend Bunny. You will appreciate, since our first sojourn together, I mean to say, the Ides of March affair, or my friend Danby in the jeweller's shop in Bond Street, well, Bunny had been rather hoping that we wouldn't have to embark upon another spree. Well, as a matter of fact, I'd encouraged Bunny to pursue his literary career. A few short stories to Strand magazine, you know. He'd actually even submitted an account of the same theft from Danby's shop that Bunny and I were involved in. You see, I maintain, ladies and gentlemen, if ever any of you decide to embark upon a life of crime, it is vitally important that you adopt a second career, one that runs parallel to the first, ideally one that has as high a profile as possible. Well, allow me to name as one example the late lamented Charlie Peace. We all know his proficiency as a thief. But are you aware also he gained quite a reputation for playing the violin, also that he was able to tame wild animals? Yes, I know. And it is also my firm belief that Jack the Ripper was rather well-to-do in real life, that he was a man of eminence, that he found his speeches being reported about side by side with those awful atrocities that he committed by night. And that's why I still refuse to burn my cricket bats. Well, you're aware, of course, of my fondness for cricket. Well, I've no special interest in the game myself. Well, why on earth should I fuss about taking a man's wicket when I'd far rather have his silver? No, but it does allow one the luxury of having a second career. Well, why on earth would anyone suspect A.J. Raffles of theft, of burglary, when early the next morning he was there, playing for gentlemen and players. Yeah. That's why I maintain cricket is as good an alibi to have as any. And why I say again, I'd encourage Bunny at every turn to write and to submit his stories. And nonetheless, he blanched a little when he asked whether we had to commit another crime quite so soon after the first. Oh, good heavens. But think of the game. The crime's the thing, Bunny. Now, don't worry. You leave it all to me. Now, I think I ought to, I believe the parlance in dime novels is to case the joint. Well, Bunny, of course, offered to assist me, but I always maintain, ladies and gentlemen, 2 eyes are always better than 4, and besides which they take up a lot less room. No, don't worry, Bunny. I'll tell you all about it in the fullness of time. Well, I met dear Bunny a week after, at the Albany. Again he asked, how was the Rosenthal affair going? Why, no, sometimes I play my cards close to my chest, an awfully bad habit of mine. Oh, very well, I said, a little trickier than I had at first anticipated, but not to worry. Now, the trouble is, Bunny always has demonstrated every once in a while a marked, reckless streak. Now, I could tell there and then he was all for marching straight up to the Rosenthal residence. Incidentally, the Rosenthal residence is the largest, grandest, most tasteless residence to be seen in all of St. John's Wood. Now, I say again, Bunny would have been all for marching straight through the front door. And I happen to know this as a fact, because that is what I caught him in the act of doing. Well, I happened to be disguised as a communal garden tramp at the time. Bunny stopped in his tracks, marched straight up to me, and then, gulping like a fish, blurted out, "Raffles! Good heavens, why do you not give the game away there and then on the spot? Now keep your voice down and follow me, but please, in God's name, at a discreet distance. Shh!" And then, as a tramp, I stumbled forward, puffing upon my corncob pipe. Well, we took a couple of omnibuses. We left the area of St. John's Wood, always Bunny followed at a discreet distance. Finally, I alighted near King's Cross. I ventured forth into the shadows of a rather disreputable-looking alleyway. Bunny followed me, and then he saw in the distance his friend A.J. Raffles disappear into an artist's studio. Well, it was quite true. A few moments later, I divested myself of the good tramp's wardrobe and was more formally attired once more. Here we were, Bunny and I, in my artist's studio. Oh, I rented it. A wonderfully useful place. A skylight, my easel over there, a wardrobe over there, do you see? Full of, I would say, 50 or so different costumes, acquired over the years. Well, one never knows precisely when such a disguise may come in handy. Well, I said to Bunny I pay the rent on the studio promptly every month. I call in twice a week. I'm always at pains to leave a newspaper behind me, to smoke a cigarette or two. Now, I explain away the blank canvas by saying to the landlord, I am still searching high and low for the ideal model. Well, it pays to be seen. Also, it pays to have a certain bolt hole. Well, I come in as one costume, I leave as another. I wouldn't pay to have A.J. Raffles seen around here, would it? Then again, there were the worst things to come to the worst, and I were to be arrested. It's always good to have an alibi, a disguised alias to stand trial in one's stead, don't you think? And I gestured once more to the wardrobe over there. And I said to Bunny, I did rather hope there was a costume to be had inside that would fit him. Fit me, Raffles, I say. What? Again, that guppy fish impersonation. Oh, yes, old boy. Yes, we are to embark upon the Rosenthal job tomorrow night. Now, I spent the last week casing out the joint, as they say, in those dime novels. It's surrounded by rather a low wall, so many houses on either side, dense shrubbery. Well, that would afford capital protection. A wonderfully efficacious place behind which to hide. Now, I explained to Bunny, Rosenthal and his fighting man Purvis were fond of their drink. Indeed, just the night before I had heard them have rather a severe altercation. I wonder, ladies and gentlemen, have any of you ever heard of IDB? Oh, no, I thought not. Well, of course, why should you have done? Illicit diamond buyer. Well, that is what Purvis, the boxer, had accused Rosenthal of being. Ah, so that is how he had come by his wealth, the purchase of illicit diamonds. Evidently, Rosenthal had blurted this out whilst drunk, and Purvis had held this against him ever since. Blackmail, I suppose, no honour amongst thieves. They were not so much friends as, as friend and foe. Well, I have to say, upon the day of the theft, I told Bunny not to shave that day. We were to adopt the guise of pure Whitechapel. Also, I was to speak in the argot of the same. I said to Bunny, leave the talking to me. I think between the two of us we looked rather disreputable. He was all fingers and thumbs, though. I had to tie on his own black mask. Well, pull yourself together, Bunny. No whiskey for you, although if you must, just the one. I won't until the task in hand is completed. No, I always maintain, before work, cricket I mean, or other games, always ensure one has a long, sober night ahead of one. But, to the night of the theft in question, well, Bunny and I found ourselves ensconced amongst the shrubbery. Now, we couldn't actually see Rosenthal, but we could hear any number of people inside. Rosenthal, of course. Oh, yes, his man Purvis. Now, I allowed myself a swift glance over the low wall. There was a woman over there whose hair reminded me of nothing so much as a bath sponge. Another woman also. Oh, I heard the popping of corks, much carousing, you know, the sort of thing. And then I heard the approach of carriage wheels. Rosenthal gave out the cry to the Gardenia Club. And then I heard the rattle of the wheels upon the gravel drive, the clatter of the horses' hooves. Not yet, Bunny. Give them a few moments. Well, truly, that night, the gods seemed to have favoured us. The stars cowered behind the clouds. Even the lights within the Rosenthal residence had been left blazing. Oh, the waiting staff had already been and gone. Indeed, the French windows also had been left unlocked. Well, anyone would think, ladies and gentlemen, as though this had been a trap. Blast. Suddenly, friend Bunny and I were blinded, so much light blazing into our eyes. We found ourselves at the business end of any number of guns. Standing in between this friendly mob, none other than friend Rosenthal himself. Already I could tell he had been in his cups. What a fool I'd been to have allowed myself to have fallen for such a rudimentary ruse. I see you now. You know that you've been casing my joint for the past week. Arms up, the two of you. Now you stay where you are, Purvis. Oh, I know what you're thinking. You wish to avail yourselves of these goddamn diamonds. No, Purvis, we won't have the law involved in this. I've had my fill of your policemen this past year or more. Why don't I allow my gun to do the talking? Hey, what do you say to that? What do you say to that? Oh, it's a fair cop, Governor. Oh, I really mean to say, I don't know what I was thinking of, me or my mate here. Oh, I mean to say it. You've been very clever about this, ain't you? I mean, setting a thief to catch a thief. What in God's own name are you inferring? Speak up now. Talking King's plain English, why don't you? Else I'll plug you full of lead. Oh, I don't mean no offence, Governor, of course not. I mean, IDB. Breakwater, I mean. Illicit diamonds and what have you. What the hell did you say there? What do you know about illicit diamonds? Oh, I didn't mean nothing wrong by it, I mean to say it. Well,
So I hear about the company I keep, you and how you've come by your fortune. Well, I don't know any more about it, but if I was you, that gentleman there to your right, Mr. Purvis, that's his name, ain't it? I think you need to look toward him if you want to know how word has got around. Purvis! Is that right? Have you been telling tales out of class? Well, I could tell by the look on Purvis's suet pudding face. Already the game was up. I will admit, though, he had the good grace to pocket his firearm. No, he wished to settle things in a gentlemanly fashion. I mean to say, he took one or two strides toward us and, well, he meant to sock me to the jaw. However, already from the corner of my eye, I noticed the window had been left open. I flung myself through the useful aperture and jumped over the garden wall, and soon had been swallowed up by the shadows. Alas, as friend Bunny informed me after the event, he was not quite so fortunate. Well, you understand, Purvis the fighter delivered his right hook, landed squarely upon poor Bunny's jaw, went down like a sack of potatoes on the spot. Well, how long he was unconscious for, I really hate to think. Suddenly Bunny tells me when he regained his wits, he was lying, spread-eagled upon the carpet. Everyone else had gone. There outside in the courtyard were Purvis and Rosenthal, arguing in exactly which direction I, which is to say Raffles, had absconded to. Now, I'm not entirely certain why Bunny decided to crawl upstairs on his hands and knees, with the gun dangling by the pin between his teeth. Well, I suppose he looked around him and saw there were waiters and Rosenthal and prize fighters everywhere to be seen otherwise. No, he crawled upstairs and found an empty room, a wardrobe inside the same. He decided to hide inside there, hoped for the best. Oh, poor Bunny. Oh, naturally he was found, he tells me. Rosenthal, he hauled him from the wardrobe and marched him down the stairs. The woman with the head of hair like a bath sponge was there. She was screaming. Purvis, the prize fighter, he was hollering. Rosenthal decided to fling Bunny against the nearest wall and once again to brandish that awful firearm of his. Now, I've already said to you, Purvis, don't you think of calling for the police. I mean to teach this young whippersnapper a lesson here. I ought to add, the mask by that point was merely affording disguise only for Bunny's left ear. It was hanging from the same. Really, no, I oughtn't, but I cannot help but smirk when I think of it. Yeah, Bunny was terrified, frozen with fear to the spot. I know, Purvis, why the hell do I not make this miscreant pay by having you dance on the spot? I know what I'll do. I'll fire my little friend here at the wall and you dance for me. Is that right, you goddamn cracksman? Dance! Oh, and Bunny did dance. Frightful business. However, I'm delighted to say that at that precise juncture, what should happen? But through the open French windows, a policeman appeared. I know. It is awfully rather like a French farce, isn't it? Oh, Purvis had assumed that the policeman had been alerted by the altercation. Now, Purvis and Rosenthal turned to the policeman there and then and demanded that they arrest this thief there and then. They also said that another fellow had managed to elude them by leaping over the garden wall and disappearing over the rooftops. Now, this policeman was a man of few words, Bunny tells me. He merely handcuffed poor Bunny and then marched him off the premises. Now, they must have walked this way for quite a while, 100 yards or so, when suddenly Bunny turned to the policeman. I say, how on earth did you do it? It is you, Raffles, isn't it? Well, quite right. Of course it was myself. Well, I've already mentioned that wardrobe in my artist's studio. Well, I happened to have stolen the policeman's uniform 2 years before, whilst at a soiree in Oxford. Well, I never knew whether it would come in handy again, but something told me I ought not to throw it away just yet.
However, I decided over that war I would fling the policeman's helmet, also probably for the best if I hanged the policeman's cape over my arm, lest we encounter a real member of the police force any moment. No, I informed friend Bunny that I sent the hansom cab once I'd alighted straight to Scotland Yard, and Inspector Mackenzie. I don't know, ladies and gentlemen, would any of you happen to be aware of Mackenzie? Well, anyway, I left him a note asking whether he'd be so kind as to return with the coachman back to the Rosenthal residence with 10 or 20 of his finest men. I understand Rosenthal and his man Purvis even now are under lock and key. Would you know, it is something of a shame I never did actually get my hands onto those diamonds. You remember the diamonds, don't you? £25,000 worth apiece, a purplish hue. The ones that Rosenthal boasted that we didn't have a prince to our name who would have enough clout about him to wear these diamonds in public. But nonetheless, it had been rather more a case of the Ides of March and a costume piece than I had anticipated. And, at least I was able to say, Bunny and I had been able to escape with our worthless lives intact. Parting is such sweet sorrow, ladies and gentlemen. Alas, all good things must come to an end, and this is no exception. It really has been capital making the acquaintance of you all. I sincerely hope you can all keep a secret. I wish you all the merriest of Christmases and the most prosperous of New Years. Please, you'll be so kind as to pass on my regards to Scotland Yard when you see them next. In some of your cases, that will be sooner rather than later, I feel. I'm aware that I have not been as discreet as I would have wished, nonetheless. I always maintain indiscretion to be the better part of valor, and perhaps more appropriately, possession to be 9/10 of the law. They do say, do they not? There's a little bit of Raffles in all of us. But then, given that I am A.J. Raffles, it stands to reason there's more of it inside me. Goodbye.